The two youths. The two youths of the two. You ever watch the My Cousin Vinny and the two youths?
Sounds just like
He's like, youths? Youths. Anyway.
You do that pretty good, actually.
What's going on with the two youths?
the New York accent is hard for me to do. It's not quite great.
Yeah.
Not great.
You want to go and get in the cab? Take a long drive down the freaking turnpike?
Isn't that the thing like the Boston, the long like
yeah, the long
they had to show a picture of like these pants and then keys, and it's like, I lost my khakis. Khakis? Khakis.
Yeah.
Love that one.
Okay,
so we are very remorseful.
Yes, we are.
To do this episode. No, we're not remorseful.
That's the problem.
The people that are listening
will be remorseful.
We
might be remorseful about doing this to the people.
You're welcome.
The episode.
Now you know.
Well, we feel bad for you guys.
Because if you don't know, now you know.
And if you don't know, now you know.
Exactly. All right, let's do this. Hey everyone, welcome to the Shrink Think podcast, and also welcome back Nathan from his travels abroad outside of Oregon.
I was gone for 2 months.
It felt like 2 months.
Yes.
Seriously, just driving across the country to take his daughter to college.
Yeah, it was the worst drive ever.
Yeah, so he's very excited to be sitting in an office, not driving. Although, do you still feel like you're moving?
No, I stopped feeling that last Tuesday. I got home on Saturday.
It took a couple of days.
Yeah, I was actually only gone for, altogether, I think it was 10 days, actually.
Yeah, it seemed like forever, though. So, we're excited to be back here, back together. We're going to be talking about remorse today, actually. And it's kind of funny. As we were kind of setting this up, we were like, okay, we're remorseful. And they're like, wait a minute, no, we're not. We're the hosts. We're talking about remorse. You guys are the ones that are remorseful if you're listening. And we're going to help you know just how remorseful you need to be.
Yeah, that's right. It's time to feel guilty, everyone.
Yes. But also, please listen and don't leave us a review after this. Listen to a different episode that you were like, oh, that was really good.
After you go to the swag shop.
Yes, after you go to the swag shop. So, this came up in talking with a few different clients this week, just in thinking about how people do like apologies and like there's some sort of an argument has happened, or and it can just be if you're a single person and you've got somebody else in your life, a family member, friend, coworker, whatever. But it came up as people were kind of going through some of this apology reconciliation process, if you will. Something happened and they got in an argument or whatever, they got to repair it. And as I was listening to several of these people talk, they were kind of explaining how they went through the apology, which we've done an episode before on an apology, which I think I kind of structured that out. And this is different from that, because it's not just how to apologize. It's like, I guess, kind of what's the heart of reconciliation or repair when you've wronged somebody or there's something that's happened. And in a certain sense, it's kind of like, what do you need to focus on? What do you need to see in order to really help the other person heal and, I guess, be recovered from your standpoint? It's up to them to do whatever they're going to do with it, but at least from this standpoint, you've done what you needed to do to see and acknowledge the thing that needs to be seen and acknowledged. So we're going to help you look deep into the heart of the pain and acknowledge it. It's not like the Eye of Sauron, don't worry.
Oh, my word.
It might feel like
Lord of the Rings reference, very casual.
It might feel like it in the moment when you're like acknowledging that. But so we're going to just talk about remorse and how to do that well today.
I think a couple things. One is that this is about remorse is coming from something that you did. You did to somebody else.
Or said.
Yeah.
Right.
Or you said something, and it can be something as small as you're joking around and it's not a joke to the other person, and you kind of realize all at once, like, okay, like that was too soon, bro.
Oopsie daisy.
Right. Or it could be something like really bad, which I guess there's a laundry list of that. And I think we were talking about this last night, and kind of how the similarities or whatever came up, is I was telling Aaron about how the people that I was working with, they were talking about repair. It was, and this is kind of how we do episodes a lot of times. We'll be talking and be like, what did you go through this week? And then you get these themes that come up. And the people that I was working with, there was 2 different clients that kept saying they were sorry all the time, like over and over and over and over and over and over. Like they're like, well, I just want to let you know that I really am sorry, that kind of thing. And that's not reparative.
Yeah, and very similarly, I was, hearing from people who were like very adamant and I think honestly very sincere about the thing that they had said or that they had done, and they were like, oh, but I acknowledge it. And I said, oh, I shouldn't have done that thing, and I'm really sorry that I did that thing, and it's kind of like, so we're good? And it's like,
check, please.
Yeah, exactly. Check, please.
Okay, so I'm sorry I did that, and let's order some orange juice this morning.
Right. Glad we figured that one out. Whew,
we can move on now.
I feel so much better.
And that actually, the way that you said that is actually the problem, because in both situations where you're saying you're sorry all the time, or you're doing something more weird, like what you were talking about.
I mean,
because I think
nobody does that.
Not that bad.
But but at least acknowledging what you did and saying like, okay, this is the thing that I did. I get it. I shouldn't have done that, and I'm sorry. I was just, concerned about this, and it hurt you, or I was insensitive, and I'm sorry. Even something just as simple as that. It's good, right? You're taking responsibility for yourself, but that's kind of where I was going. Like if I, exaggerate and dramatize it, it's kind of like, okay, glad I took care of that. I feel better. That's kind of what you're saying when you're doing that.
And you're also saying that, you're also trying to have that happen when you're saying you're sorry 300 times.
Right. Bibbity boppity boop, and we're done.
Another person goes like, wow, you should feel great. I really accept your apology. Right. I hope you feel a lot better about hurting me.
I hope I accept your apology. You should feel great.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm still like bleeding inside, but I'm glad you feel better.
Thank you for everything. That's all I needed. If you would have not injured me and then said you were sorry, that would have even been better.
Right.
Anyway, yeah. So, but it's not. So it's like, what do you do with that remorse, right? So with one family that I was working with a while ago, I don't know how long ago, the issue came up about this because what they were talking about is telling their children, and this is super common. All of you listening want to be good parents, I'm certain, or else the type of person listening to this show is going to want to be a good parent.
If you don't want to be a good parent, can you please stop listening to our show? Because we're just going to aggravate you.
Crap, I have to keep caring for these little suckers. They keep showing up like maggots, eating everything I got.
Yes.
Yeah. Little parasites. Anyway. Yeah.
Find a different show to leech off of.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, so how they were looking at it is, they've got these kids that are coming in and saying like, well, I said I was sorry, so that's fine. We're moving on. And with this, and they had to kind of agree with that because of the system that they set up. So on the one hand, everything is age dependent, right? You do need to teach your children how to repair a relationship from the standpoint of like, okay, this is what you do, this is what you say, this is what happened, so this is what you did, and this is how it affected the other person, and now that means you need to say you're sorry, because that helps out. Like we're talking a kid that's a toddler, right? 3, maybe 4. At some point in there, you actually need to help them empathize, which is where the remorse comes in. You have to, and that, I know that you're doing it. I would just say that I'm sure that you're trying that. I think the thing that I run into that's different, that I will tell people to consider, and as I will put it, to camp on, little campers, campy camp, is the idea of how the other person feels. So you don't just tell them that hurt them and you should feel bad about it. Because with empathy, as we've talked about on the previous show, you have to get into the mindset of what the other person is. Now with a kid, that can be kind of hard, right? But it's actually not as hard as you think. All that you might want to do is just say to your kiddo, how do you think they feel? And like think is a cognitive thing, right? So they will naturally, without even whatever, they'll go into their head and they'll say, I don't know. Like, okay, but you saw them, right? What did they look like? Well, they were crying. Okay, do you believe that they were sad? Do you think they were mad? What? And this is the kind of process you go through. It's a longer process, right? Because as a parent, you want to typically move on. I mean, you do want to deal with the issue, but you do want to move on. And these things take a little bit more time.
Yeah, and to kind of take that a little bit further, what you're also saying positionally, and when I say positionally, I mean between the two people. So I'm sitting across from Nathan as we're recording this, and so if you think about moving like from one person, me, from my back toward my chest, and then from my chest toward Nathan, and then toward his chest, and then beyond his chest, to his back, like from me to him. Positionally, what you're doing is you're moving from in your perspective. If you're the person that caused the harm or did the thing, said the words that were harmful, you're moving positionally from you out of yourself, out of your own perspective, your experience, your feelings, and toward the other person. And it's not just getting into their shoes, like that's what empathy would be. It's like you're seeing it from their point of view, or understanding how they experienced it, or understanding and validating, ultimately how they felt the harm, the impact of what you did. It's not just that, but it's also then you seeing that thing and acknowledging that thing in them. So it's not just being in their shoes, right, and feeling it. It's also then coming back into your own seat, back away from Nathan, back toward me. And then it's saying, oh, I see that eye of Sauron, that I don't want to see, that I caused, right? I understand how I hurt you, and I did that. That's tough, right? It's moving out of yourself into the other person's point of view and recognizing that you're the one that caused that harm. I mean, it's one thing to just say like, oh, I did this thing, right? But you don't have to positionally get into the other person's shoes to empathize. But if you do empathize and it's like, oh, I can imagine you felt this way, that's a good second step, right? But then this remorse thing that we're talking about today is also that third step, which is, and I caused that pain in you.
Right. And then it's admitting it and then saying, you really do have to say that I caused that. That's kind of where you start when you're actually verbalizing it out. Because it's an acknowledgement that it's a validation, really, that you're validating, like, I see what I did here. But you can't prove that you understand what you did without remorse. Remorse helps to evidence that you understand what you did and how it affected the other person. It's why it is reparative, because the other person can believe that you actually do care and that you did not want to do that. Like, that's not who you are either. And so it has the possibility to move forward. And I say possibility because sometimes this doesn't end up working out. Like, that friendship could be gone in some situations.
Yeah, depending on what happened or what you did, obviously, it can be like too much. You're like, but I said I'm sorry, or I really understand. It's like, well, the damage was just so great or whatever. But to your other point too, there's a part of it where if you're saying, this reminds me of like when somebody admits to being wrong, or like they say they're sorry, like especially kids or whatever. When they admit that, it's kind of like as a parent, you're wondering like, are you sorry that you did that thing because it was wrong and it hurt your little sister, or are you sorry that you got caught? Right? It's like, yeah. I'm sorry. I wish I hadn't done that because I wouldn't like be grounded for a day.
I'm sorry that I'm not allowed to keep playing right now.
Exactly. I'm so sorry about that. That would be about yourself. So this is also positionally moving you away from being sorry that I did that thing and I feel bad about that, right? That's about me, versus I'm sorry that I caused that pain in you and I care about your feelings. I care about your experience. I care about you as a person, and I see that I hurt you, and that's what I'm sorry about. That's actually really tough to do. Yeah,
it is tough. And as we're working through this, I think it is really helpful to do it through the lens of helping your children, because I think it's helpful for all of us as well. Because the other thing that happens when you're sitting there with the kid is, as they start to feel it, as they do start, now all of a sudden they feel scrutinized. They feel like, so this is not going to be with every kid. Some kids are going to be a little more, I don't know what maybe the word mature could be in there. I'm not sure. It's largely personality, but a kiddo might be like, wow, and they might be like, I do see that, and I'm sorry, and they kind of get there. Some kids are going to feel like, what are you trying to do? Like, and they get mad and they want to leave because they are overwhelmed by that emotional experience. So with that,
and I can say also and I want to broaden this not to just children. We can use kids as an example, but I love that you're actually using children because it's so simple, right? As the example, because I always say adults are just grown up children, and so the things that you're describing, Nathan, actually, this is what adults will do as well, just in an adult version of that, right? They might try to get defensive or make excuses or get out of it and be like, well, what, but they might get, mad in that way. Also, children and adults may also go to shame. When you see genuinely that you've hurt somebody like that, you may actually then have some message that comes up in you that says, I am such a bad person. I am horrible. I'm awful. How could I have done that? And that's something you also don't want to do, because then you're still making it about yourself. It actually is very challenging to kind of like walk that tightrope of looking somebody in the eyes and seeing their pain and acknowledging that you caused this, and then allowing yourself to feel it without running away from that feeling, without justifying it, excusing it, shutting it down, just tolerating it. And that's usually when I, like personally, when I do this myself, that's when I start really feeling the remorse. I can feel bad, before that, but when I'm looking at somebody that I've hurt in the eyes and I can see the pain and I'm just sitting with it and I'm like, oh, this is bad. Like, I feel really bad. I see, and I want to run away as fast as possible, as much as possible. But the best thing to do is just sit in it. And it really does kind of feel like you potentially are like sort of taking a beating. Like you're in court and you're just like, yes, Your Honor, I'm guilty. And then whatever they say, whatever sentence is like, yep, that's what I get because I did that thing.
Yeah, it is hard, and there's no way around the hardness. Basically, is what it is, and really, when we were starting the beginning, talking about from the perspective of people saying I'm sorry all the time or making it about themselves, it's an action of a movement to get away from the depth of the difficulty, because it is hard, right? So slowing down is actually important, and I think, speaking of the kids through the lifespan of adults, a lot of times I think that's probably why it actually is harder for adults, is because they didn't learn how to do it when they were younger. That's so right. Sitting inside of that, when you're a kid, helping your kiddo do that is powerful. It's like, take your time, because this is going to be something that serves them in humanity for the rest of their life.
That's right. And I think there are two kind of key things about it. I mean, I talked about like sitting in it or whatever, but the kid needs to know that it's safe to do. And you as a person, if you're listening, and you're struggling with this, you need to know that it is safe to hold that feeling and sit in that discomfort inside yourself. And maybe you, like you said, Nate, if you haven't listened, if you haven't been given that space, if you haven't learned that in your life, then you don't know that it's safe. You have these ideas in your head that it's like, oh, it's too uncomfortable, it's bad, the other person's gonna like hurt me or like retaliate, and I just have to take it. And that's not true. None of those things are true. You can just sit with the feeling, and it's uncomfortable inside of yourself, but allowing yourself to be in it is like, okay, I can safely hold this feeling. The other thing that it's doing, and I would say like this is like really, 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 really important, and also like really good for you if you've hurt somebody, and also really good for your relationship with the person that you've harmed, is that when you sit in this and you are remorseful and you're acknowledging this pain, what it does to you when you experience that is hopefully you say, wow, that is terrible. I don't want to do that again. I don't want to hurt you anymore like that. I want to be a softer, kinder, more considerate, thoughtful person. Somehow, some way, I just had some other song lyrics. It's like you've done something and you're looking at kind of the wreckage of what you've caused, and that ought to change you to be a better person.
Yeah, the reality is that when you start with somebody young and you're helping them when they're little, you can help hold the space, is what it's called. So when they get into that, I want you to note this. This is kind of the big deal, okay? When they get into that anger that they don't want to be there anymore, you're going to tell them things like, I know who you are. I know that you are not a bad kid. You are not a bad person. This is something that happened. There is another side to this. And the other side is you just say, you say that you're sorry because you feel it. I can tell that you feel it. And it can be over. We don't have to keep feeling. The goal is not to dust you into the ground, that kind of idea. The goal is to help hold the space for the kid to be okay with, because they're probably going to break down and they'll probably turn into tears and that kind of thing. And you might actually have to give them more space.
And that's actually a really good thing. I'm glad you said it can be over, because when you feel those feelings, you hold that space is held for you if you've caused it, and you're feeling it and you experience it, and then you sort of let it out, you break down, or you just let yourself feel it. It's kind of like you're allowing yourself to move through it and then move past it, so that it actually, on an emotional level, can be done for you, right? Mm-hmm. The situation might still be going on, but you're sort of through those feelings. And that's a really good thing, as opposed to you didn't really move through the feelings, and so you're sort of stockpiling the feelings somewhere, and then the situation might be over, but emotionally speaking, you're still stuck.
Right. And so as you're sitting there with this kiddo holding space, you would say to them, the next thing that needs to happen is you need to do what's called speaking to this. And that means that you need to say, you at some point need to say that you're sorry and apologize, but you also need to say, to the best that you can, what you think the other person might have felt because of what you did.
And it doesn't matter if you're wrong, right? You're trying, you're imagining, you're empathizing and saying
The space where they go into their bedroom and cry for a while before they say it, but they still have those next steps to do. So they can do the next steps then, and it's important to forecast it, because as they start to get used to this space, they will move that time frame up. They won't, the next time they don't go to their room, because they know, okay, this is what needs to happen and it can be over. So I will do it now to get it over with, but it'll be the same process, or the same, what is it called? Situation process? Yeah, the same. We're going to go with it. We're going to go with it. Anyway.
We'll go with it.
All right. With that, it's the best Remorse podcast we've ever done. I think it's the only one.
Yeah, I don't really have any regrets or remorse about anything that was said or wasn't said in this episode, so I feel great.
All right, little campers. Have a great day.
All right.
So that stinks. Did the video go off?
I know it did. I don't understand. Yeah, they're plugged in. I know. It's weird.
And now
they came back, so something happened.
And they're back.
They're back.
What if it was a Bluetooth connection or something?
Yeah, maybe.
What, you know what I mean?
I'm wondering if it's a battery issue. But okay. Before I forget, as we were talking about remorse,
right
yeah,
we are recording right now.
Mm-hmm. This is just the tail end. While before I forget, we're talking about you said something about remorse, and I was thinking, this is another good topic. What were you saying at the very end? It can be over. Conflict avoidance. I think we should do an episode on facing conflict, or basically call it conflict avoidance, because man, I think there are tons of people out there that avoid conflict, and I don't think we've really addressed the whole idea of avoiding conflict.
Yeah, I want to avoid that.
Of course. Yeah, that sounds like a terrible idea.
I'm going to stay farther away from the mic. Maybe if I get over there. Yeah.
So it's a solo episode. No, it's cool though. I was looking up. I thought maybe I could put this out there, but I didn't get a chance. But yeah, we talked about was it episodes 32 and 33, Say I'm Sorry, and Reasons, Excuses, Intent, and Impact. Way back, probably 2020. But those were like great connections to this episode.
Yes,
So
they are great
been a while.
connections. It's good connections
Yeah.
for episodes of I'm sorry that you are dead. That is remorseful for me.